let's assume that Jane McGonigal is right and that reality is, in fact, broken. Jane compares the way we perform in our real lives and the way we act in games and says on page 4, as we make these value judgments, hold moral debates over the addictive quality of games, and simultaneously rush to achieve massive industry expansion, a vital point is being missed. The fact that so many people of all ages all over the world are choosing to spend so much time in game worlds is a sign of something important, a truth that we urgently need to recognize. And the truth is this: in today's society, computer and video games are fulfilling genuine human needs that the real world is currently unable to satisfy. Games are providing rewards that reality is not. They are teaching and inspiring and engaging us in ways that reality is not. They're bringing us together in ways that reality is not. And unless something dramatic happens to reverse the resulting exodus, we're fast on our way to becoming a society in which a substantial portion of our population devotes its greatest efforts to playing games, creates its best memories in game environments, and experiences its greatest successes in game worlds. Now please note as an aside that this is the first of the 6 quotes I'm dialoguing with in this relational summary, and that I've provided the reference, page 4 of Jane McGonigal's Reality is Broken. You can also find the argument at the website that I'm showing you here. Now, one of McGonigal's big themes is the supposed tragedy of this mass exodus to virtual reality and how to counter it by improving real reality. But how do we begin to go about fixing reality? Well, if you went to the doctor and you complained, "Doctor, I'm broken," the doctor, assuming she's any good, isn't simply going to tell you to take 2 aspirin and call her in the morning. She will try to determine exactly where and how you are broken, and from that diagnosis, seek the appropriate treatment. And so it must be when we're treating the ills of a broken reality. First, we have to decide what parts of reality seem to be broken, and then we have to define for ourselves whether we're talking about human society in general, which goes back tens of thousands of years, or is it the recent human social and technological experiment we call civilization, which goes back sometime between 5,000 and 8,000 years ago? Or was it our transition from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle, going back millions of years and shared with many other animals, to the sedentary agricultural lifestyle now unique to our species? Is that what created a feeling of being out of step with reality? Reality being a nature to which we are no longer well adapted, and that hence led to a feeling of brokenness? These hypotheses, which suggest a mismatch between the type of creature the human animal evolved to be and the environment in which it now finds itself, is popular in the popular literature that explores genetics, biological anthropology, evolution, and sociobiology. We find good arguments for the idea of man the maladapted animal in the works of authors like Desmond Morris, Robert Ardrey, Konrad Lorenz, and Erich Fromm in the 1960s in books like The Naked Ape, The Territorial Imperative, On Aggression, and The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, and recently in works by geneticist Spencer Wells, who wrote Pandora's Seed, The Unforeseen Cost of Civilization, Why the Hunter-Gatherer Holds the Key to Our Survival, and Daniel Quinn, who wrote ISHMAEL and Beyond Civilization, Humanity's Next Great Advantage. The basic argument about humans being out of step with nature is exemplified by Quinn in the notion he writes about levers and takers. Where we went wrong, Quinn says, is when we decided that we could decide who gets to live and die. He says on page 239 of ISHMAEL, the premise of the taker's story is that the world belongs to man, while the premise of the lever's story is that man belongs to the world. For 3 million years, man belonged to the world, and because he belonged to the world, he grew and developed and became brighter and more dexterous, until one day he was so bright and so dexterous that we had to call him Homo sapiens sapiens, which means he was us. The lever's story is that the gods made man for the world the same way they made salmon and sparrows for the world. This seems to have worked well so far, so we can take it easy and leave the running of the world to the gods. Quinn uses a talking gorilla as the main character who tells humanity that the taker culture has used both religion and science to justify playing God and to justify acting as if we can do whatever we want to our environments. He says, the story of Genesis must be undone. First, Cain must stop murdering Abel. This is essential if you're to survive. The levers are the endangered species most critical to the world, not because they're humans, but because they alone can show the destroyers of the world that there's more than one right way to live. And then, of course, you must spit out the fruit of the forbidden tree. You must absolutely and forever relinquish the idea that you know who should live and who should die on this planet. Let me give you another aside. This is the second quote I'm using in this relational summary, and this time the quote is from outside readings not assigned to the course. So I'm relating the ideas from our course readings to ideas from material that I've hunted and gathered myself. And this is a key part of your relational summary, bringing in outside arguments from books and websites that you find so that you can integrate them with your own ideas and with the assigned readings. You can learn more about the ideas in Quinn's ISHMAEL by going to this website, and in this way I'm leaving a paper trail of my sources. Suggesting that human culture explains where we went wrong might not be the full answer, though. Not many people in the world want to leave its running to the gods. People started acting as though the world belonged to them rather than the other way around, because many did find that life in, quote, harmony with nature to be, as Hobbes famously pointed out in his Leviathan, nasty, brutish, and short. So despite some evidence from certain tropical environments favoring the Rousseauian concept of the noble savage living in a carefree life in the balance with her surroundings, there's also evidence of great hardship for groups of people trying to live well while belonging to the world. So there is another perspective we might consider, and that is the idea that maybe nature itself is broken. Maybe the very nature of nature, the way the universe in general and the earth in specific were created, inevitably leads any intelligent and feeling organism to feel dissatisfied. In that case, reality isn't just broken, but perhaps was never such a great place to begin with. Regardless of the level of reality in which you may find yourself unhappy, identifying the priority areas is still of the essence, and finding ways to improve the parts that trouble you most seems to be one of the major tasks we face in life. Fortunately, Dr. McGonigal identifies several areas where she finds reality to be broken and gives several possible solutions. In part 2 of her book, Reinventing Reality, she quotes Ralph Waldo Emerson saying, "All life is an experiment. The more experiments we make, the better." And the experiment that she urges us to run, using games as the safest and most rewarding testing ground, are encapsulated in the following list, compiled from throughout the book on the website fragileearthstudios.com, Fixes for Reality. Number 1, compared with games, reality is too easy. Games challenge us with voluntary obstacles and help us put our personal strengths to better use. 2, compared with games, reality is depressing. Games focus our energy with relentless optimism on something we're good at and enjoy. 3, compared with games, reality is unproductive. Games give us clearer missions and more satisfying hands-on work. 4, compared with games, reality is hopeless. Games eliminate our fear of failure and improve our chances for success. 5, compared with games, reality is disconnected. Games build stronger social bonds and lead to more active social networks. The more time we spend interacting with our social networks, the more likely we are to generate a subset of positive emotions known as pro-social emotions. 6, compared with games, reality is trivial. Games make us part of something bigger and give epic meaning to our actions. 7, compared with games, reality is hard to get into. Games motivate us to participate more fully in whatever we're doing. 8, compared with games, reality is pointless and unrewarding. Games help us to feel more rewarded for making our best effort. 9, compared with games, reality is lonely and isolating. Games help us band together and create powerful communities from scratch. 10, compared to games, reality is hard to swallow. Games make it easier to tame good advice and try out happier habits. 11, compared with games, reality is unsustainable. The gratification we get from playing games are an infinitely renewable resource. 12, compared with games, reality is unambitious. Games help us define awe-inspiring goals and tackle seemingly impossible social missions together. 13. Compared with games, reality is disorganized and divided. Games help us make a more concerted effort, and over time, they give us collaborative superpowers. 14. Reality is stuck in the present. Games help us imagine and invent the future together. McGonigal concludes that maybe we should be treating our reality more like a game. However, given limited time and resources, we still need to find a starting point. We need to pinpoint at least one major area where our daily reality makes us suffer, and it's important that we identify an area that we have at least some control over and apply our fixes there first. Where to look? John Taylor Gatto clearly identifies an area that he believes is central to the problem and vital to the fix, and that is something that is very close to all of us and to a certain extent within our control. The place? School. The idea that school itself could be our chief problem may strike some of you as odd. Schools are supposed to be something we need more of, not less of, right? Schools are supposed to be our most important solution to our problems, right? I mean, when we talk about helping third world countries, we talk about building more schools. When we talk about the path to success, we talk about the need for more schooling. But, according to John Taylor Gatto in Weapons of Mass Instruction, schools themselves may be the very things that are most broken in our reality. And Jane McGonigal is inclined to agree. And it isn't just a matter of differentiating between so-called good schools and so-called bad schools. According to Gatto, it's the very nature of the institution that makes it rank as the greatest of our problems. So here is the second of the 3 quotes from our assigned readings that I want to call attention to. Gatto says, "Our American schools, both public and private, are fashioned after the Prussian system of education. The Prussians, early Germans, were well known for their regimented society and their efficient military. Divide children by subject, by age grading, by constant rankings on tests, and by many other more subtle means, and it was unlikely that the ignorant mass of mankind separated in childhood would ever reintegrate into a dangerous whole. A society divided is a society which cannot find its way. So it was there in Prussia, and still is here in America, that we have a society of people able and willing to take orders. Mandatory education serves children only incidentally. Its real purpose is to turn them into servants. A society of servants requires a class of leaders." He also says, 1 in every 5 American jobs, you'll notice, is some form of oversight over the behavior of others. These quotes come from page 8 in Roman numerals, XVIII, of the prologue Against School, and more can be found at this website. The Gatto perspective, which we should all think through with an open mind, is that our schools aren't failing, not by a long shot. The problem is that they're succeeding too well. How can that be? Well, Gatto contends that our schools are succeeding in doing what they were really set up to do, which is not to educate, which is to keep people from being independent creative thinkers and from being able to compete in the marketplace. In other words, schools were set up not to help you get a good education, but to put barriers in the way of you getting a good education. Now, he gives plenty of good evidence for the idea that the dysfunction of schools is deliberate. But even if it weren't, a strong case could still be made that the reality of schools is still broken in the sense that the way schools operate goes against millions of years of coevolution between human minds and the environments we evolved in. The argument that people are maladapted to the institutional school environment is made most strongly by J. Gary Bernhard in his book Primates in the Classroom, an evolutionary perspective on children's education. I use Bernhard as the second of my quotes from unassigned readings that I think are relevant to the dialectic we are engaging in. On page 75, Bernhard echoes something that Spencer Wells says in Pandora's Seed when he says why hunter-gatherers hold the key to our survival. He reminds us that an interesting aspect of the context of closeness and cooperation in nomadic foraging societies is conversation. People seek one another out, keep up on all the latest news, talk before, during, and after the hunt, tell jokes, and tease one another. He quotes from the anthropologist Tonkinson from 1978, page 127, who lived among the Kung bush people of Botswana, saying, also characteristic of hunter-gatherers are a gregariousness, a love of animated discussion and repartee, and a keen interest in what transpires in all dimensions. Conversation keeps up good open communication among the members of the band through its constantly flowing expression. It is a salutary outlet for emotions, and it serves as the principal sanction in social discipline.